Greetings and salutations. My name is Michael Schwahn, and welcome to the very first episode of Thai Talk, a series where we put on our formal wear and discuss something important. Today, we are going to be discussing Black Lives Matter. Now, before we actually discuss Black Lives Matter, we need to talk about the dismissive response that people like to go to, which is all lives matter. Because before we go into what needs to be done, what should have been done, why things are happening, we need to try and get over that initial hurdle of people's jerk reaction defense that is them feeling as though they have been slighted by saying that potentially their life doesn't matter. First, that is not what they are saying when they say Black Lives Matter. They are not saying that only Black Lives Matter, and they are not saying that Black lives matter more than yours does. They are saying that their life should matter as much as yours does. And unfortunately right now, in our society and in our communities, that is not true. Now, this is not saying that you have always had it easy. This is not saying that you do not also have your own problems, your own strifes, your own obstacles that you either have overcame or need to overcome. They are not trying to downplay your struggles in life. The thing that they are trying to say is that their struggles are really bad, and in a lot of ways, struggles that you will never see. And that brings us to the other thing that is talked about a lot, and that is not always a comfortable thing for people to talk about, which is privilege. Now, I will try to explain this as easily as I can. Privilege is having to not deal with something that someone else does. Now again, this is not saying that your life is easy, that your life doesn't have its problems. This is just saying that you have things that you don't know about that are easier simply because of your skin color. Let me give you an example. I am white, and I know that I have white privilege. I have gotten many traffic tickets in my life. I drive very quickly, or at least I used to, especially when I was a teenager. And whenever I would get pulled over, I was very broke when I was young. So whenever I'd get pulled over, I was concerned about getting a traffic ticket. Speeding tickets are expensive. They normally start out at like $180 and go up to like $500, depending on what state and district or municipality or season you're in. Not season. County you're in. That was always my concern. Crap, I got pulled over. I know I was going over the speed limit. I might get a ticket, and maybe I can get off with a warning, but if I get a ticket, how much is going to be and how am I going to pay for it? That was my concern. There are countless Black Americans in the United States of America and around the world, but for now we'll talk about the United States of America, that when they get pulled over, maybe even if they weren't speeding, their concern is not, am I going to get a ticket? How am I going to pay for that ticket? Their concern instead is, am I going to get killed by this police officer? And that is the difference when it comes to somebody who has privilege and somebody who does not. And that is really hard to explain because it's hard to recognize something that you don't experience. Because while you get the benefits of privilege, it's hard to see. Because unless you don't have it, you can't see it. So in that comparison, that Black individual that gets pulled over and is concerned for their life compared to the white individual who is concerned for a ticket, those are two very different realities in the very same situation. I'm concerned about money. I'm concerned about getting a ticket. And that is my privilege because I am white, because I don't have to be concerned for my life. And that is all they're saying when they say that you have white privilege. They're not saying that your life is easy. They are not saying that you didn't have those same problems with not getting enough money, with not getting into the school that you wanted, but things like that that are made easier for you or less concerning for you because of your skin color. And that doesn't even go into employment, education, things like that. Because there are a lot of things that there is systemic racism that prevents a Black individual from getting something that they would have gotten if they were white. And again, as someone who is white, that is hard to see, that is hard to recognize, because it is all very quietly done. And a lot of it sometimes is very subconsciously done. There is a lot of microaggressions in our racist society that people don't even realize that they're doing. I'm sure I have done it that I didn't realize I was doing it. And there's a lot of those, and it's important that we take the time to realize that we're doing it and take the time to put in the effort to not do it again. So, all lives matter is not saying that your life doesn't matter. It is saying that their lives currently matter less. It is that if you had 2 broken arms, if one of your arms was broken, the doctor's going to treat the arm that is broken. You wouldn't say, well, what about my other arm? Your other arm is fine. Yeah, I mean, maybe the elbow squeaks a bit, or you're like, I got this soreness in my shoulder, but it's not broken. And right now, that broken arm is the Black society in America. Black individuals, Black Americans that have the same rights, or at least they're supposed to have the same rights that white Americans do, and they don't. They are asking for equality. Now, we can look at the Constitution, at the laws of the land, and initially, on paper, it says we all should be equal. That's what the Civil Rights Act was supposed to do, was make us all equal. But that is not the reality with how our system has been implemented and designed. But again, that's hard to see, that's hard to recognize as a white person. But a Black person knows it, a Black person sees it, a Black person lives it. And they shouldn't have to, because we all do live in the same country, under the same laws, under the same Constitution, under the same bills that all say that we're supposed to be equal. So when you see someone saying Black Lives Matter, they just want to matter as much as someone who isn't Black. That's what they're asking for. Now, what is it that is holding them down so much? 400 years of oppression, slavery, racism, actually more than 400, but in this country, right around 400. They are continuously profiled, segregated, even if it's not through direct labeling, and discriminated against simply because they are Black. Now, there are many people in this world, in this country, that have been taught stereotypes that are wrong to be taught. There is a lot of stereotypes that exist in this country about how Black people are the ones who are more likely to commit crimes, but they don't look at the reason why. Nor do they look at the incarceration rates for Black people versus white people, or the incarceration rates for violent versus nonviolent crimes, or the lengths of those incarcerations. And that's if the Black individual even gets to live long enough to go to prison, let alone if they're just killed on the side of the street when they were being arrested for what may be a nonviolent crime, or may have been that they were just walking down the street. What do we do about it? One, we talk about it. When there are 2 sides, one is the oppressor and one is who they are oppressing, silence is siding with the oppressor. If you do nothing, if you say nothing, then the person in control wins. And right now, that is the militaristic police state of a country that we exist in. That is the rich wanting the poor, and especially the poor minorities, to fall in line, do as they're told, make and buy their products, and make them richer. That is the society that we live in. So if you say nothing, that is how society will stay. And the longer that that is allowed to happen, the more frustrated, the more desperate people will get. We live in a society that is built on the idea of consumerism. We want things. We want a new car, we want bigger houses, we want more stuff, we want a bigger TV, we want more movies to watch on those TVs, we want clothes. Everything that is pitched to us at every moment is something for us to have and to own. But there are large sections of our community, and the largest sections of those communities are minorities that don't get to own things, that are given the very bottom of what is left, and that is only because a short 60 years ago, the government decided that they have to get something. But it was not that long ago that they got nothing and made everything for everybody. When they're human and they deserve everything that everyone else deserves. That is why you see these protests. It is not about the brutal murder of George Floyd. That is an inciting action, an inciting moment that all of us, while we're locked inside during a pandemic, a global pandemic that is killing over 100,000 Americans and over 300,000 people worldwide, over 2 million cases in America and over 6 million cases worldwide, we had to lock ourselves inside and watch as the people that are supposed to defend us killed a man on the side of the road that was innocent. And if that doesn't upset you, you need to ask yourself why. Because it should. Because innocent people should not be killed, especially not by the people that are supposed to protect them. And innocent people should not go to jail, especially not to benefit a society that wants to keep them there. Now, what do we need to do? What do we need to change? There's a lot of things that we can do. Now, you see some very drastic steps, such as abolish the police, defund the police. And we've seen in some areas where this is either being done or being talked about. Now, why is that an option at all? Because some people will be like, isn't that a terrible idea? Why would you want to defund the police? Isn't that dangerous? What checks do we have? What protections do we have? First, the police are being asked to do too much, and especially for too little and with too little training. The average, and I may be wrong on this number, the average amount of training a police officer receives, wow, that was bad English, receives in the United States is like a little over 3 months, maybe more. I don't remember the exact number. I think it's like 18 weeks. 18 weeks of training to be taught how to handle more than just protecting people. Because if there is a domestic dispute, the police are called, even if there's not violence involved. If there is something involving children, the police are called. If there's a mental health issue, the police are called, and I can attest to this one. If the police also respond to fire emergencies, police respond to everything. Because as a society, we've been trained, if there's something wrong, call 911, which is a good concept in theory. But if someone's breaking into a building, you call the police. If someone's having a seizure, you call 911. They will send the police and an ambulance, but the police are supposed to be there first as well. They are first responders. They respond to the scene first. They're being asked to do too many things with too little training. Because doctors, they need a doctorate. They need 7+ years of education to do their jobs. And that's true for a lot of professions. Lawyers need 7+ years. The people that will execute the laws that defend you in court against the law have 7 years of training compared to the less than a year that a police officer receives. Now, police need more training. They also need to have some of their burden released on them, because there are functions within society that should not be handled by police. If something is a mental health issue, the police should not be the ones that respond to that. Instead, there should be task force of people. There should be their own organizations that respond to those issues, that are trained to deal with those issues. Because there's no way that you can ask a police officer to deal with 50 plus situations that will vary from day to day and give them that little training. Even with sufficient training, that would be extremely difficult. They are not Superman. They are not superheroes. They are police. But even if they had the right training, even if the systems were in place to deal with things that the police shouldn't deal with, we have other problems that exist in this society and in our systemic community. Police don't adhere to the same laws that everyone else should. They have something called qualified immunity, which qualified immunity is something that the Supreme Court implemented in the late 80s that allowed police to essentially be immune to the law. Now, it's a little bit more in depth than that, but that is the easiest way to summarize it. And this has since led them to be very comfortable with doing whatever they want. And this isn't okay. And this is why we need to put the police in check. Because they have been taught for years and years and years that their actions are okay when they're not. It is not okay to stop and frisk someone simply because of what they look like. It is not okay to shoot somebody who is coming out of their house with a hairbrush in their hand. It is not okay to tackle and abuse teenagers simply because they are walking down the street. It is not okay to kneel on a man's neck until he passes out and dies because there was suspicion that he was using counterfeit money. That is not okay. And those are some very small examples of hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of cases that have happened in the United States where somebody didn't get to go home or never had a chance to have a fair trial to go home. And that needs to change. Police don't receive enough training. Police in other countries receive years of training and they see 0 deaths within their system. But we have this issue where escalation keeps happening to the point where somebody gets hurt. Now, what can we do about it? We can look at abolishing the police, but I know for many that'll be too drastic of a measure. One of the things that is being brought up is the 8 can't wait. These are 8 things that we need to do, that all police forces should do. And we don't need to wait for legislature to implement it. We don't need to wait for Congress to pass something. This is something that we can hold our own societies accountable for. So what are the 8 can't wait? These are 8 things that we need to have in every police force. Number 1, ban chokeholds and strangleholds. There's no reason to choke somebody when you are arresting them. There's no need, and it leads to injury, and it does not help any situation at all. You can restrain somebody without choking them, without strangling them, no matter what side you're on. Those need to be banned. 2, require de-escalation. How many videos have you seen, if you've looked them up, of police just immediately going for their gun? That should be the last option. You should always try to talk someone down. And we've seen this happen. We have seen this happen in America in the last few years, where there are mass shooters that have killed over a dozen people, sometimes over 24 people, that are talked down by police, that are de-escalated by police and brought in, arrested, and then put to trial. But those mass shooters are white. If they were black, I ask you to ask yourself if you think they would have been able to be talked down. Not if they were able to, if they would have been given the chance to be talked down. And that's for monsters that have killed children, that have shot churchgoers, that have shot up nightclubs, concert goers, and more. Why do they get to be talked down when somebody who is walking down the street doesn't even get a chance to speak? Number 3, require warning before shooting. This is not actually required in a large part of America. You don't have to warn you do. In fact, you're not allowed to shoot people, the police are. Police officers in a lot of the United States do not have to warn someone before shooting them. They don't have to say stop or I'll shoot. They don't have to say stand down or I'll shoot. They don't have to give you any warning at all. That is wrong. Because again, that should not be the thing that happens. That is the end, last resort, is to have to shoot somebody. Number 4, requires exhausting all alternatives before shooting. So this means not only are we looking at de-escalation, try and talk the situation down, try and get them to put their weapon down, try and suss out what happened in the situation, ask more questions, warn them before you shoot them, but you have to try to do everything you can before you touch your firearm. We have alternatives. We have things like pepper spray, which is also kind of fucked up in a lot of ways. We have things like tasers. We have so many ways that we can try to resolve a situation without shooting somebody. And in a lot of places, it is not required that police do that before they just whip out their gun and shoot somebody. Number 5, duty to intervene. So this is not necessarily your job to intervene, although I encourage you to do so if you see something wrong. This is the protection for good officers and asking good officers to be good officers. If a officer sees another officer doing something wrong, doing something illegal, doing something that goes against everything else in here, it is their job to step in and make that other officer stand down. Because we hear in these talks about Black Lives Matter about how there are good officers in there. But we've also seen numerous stories come out of where a good officer tried to be a good officer, tried to talk down a over-aggressive fellow officer, or tried to call out the injustices within their own police department and were excommunicated because they questioned their own system that operates on this disgusting hierarchy of who's in charge, and you're not allowed to question it. The duty to intervene is something that, if implemented, it is now the officer's job to intervene in other officers wrongly doing their job. Number 6, ban shooting at moving vehicles. Now, if someone is driving away and you're like, oh no, I need to stop them, you cannot shoot at them. That's the idea behind this, because what ends up happening is that they end up hitting somebody that is not the person that they are aiming at. Because it's very difficult to shoot a moving target, especially a quickly moving target, such as a vehicle. And if they miss and they hit someone on the sidewalk and that person dies, that person shouldn't have died. Because you don't want people to get hurt. So if somebody is speeding away, follow them, put a bird in the air, take down all the information. There's options that don't involve pulling out your gun and shooting at them. Number 7, establish use of force continuum. Now what this means is that it applies different uses of force to different situations. So, and this goes into even their equipment. So if you are responding to, in the case of George Floyd, you're responding to a possible counterfeit transaction. You are responding to somebody believing that maybe there is a fake $20 bill being used at their store. There is no reason to use a taser. There is no reason to use a gun. And I'm not saying that they did, but this is the idea behind it. You have your tools to deal with the situation. And as a situation changes, you can change how you respond to it. That's it. That's not complicated. You don't walk up on a situation of where you go, oh man, I see this person walking down the street and they look a little bit suspicious. I better pull my gun out. That is not appropriate. There's no need for that. If they pull a gun on you, I mean, now the situation's changed. But that's not the situation that most of these people find them in, that they don't get to go home at the end of the day. They don't even get to see tomorrow. Number 8, require comprehensive reporting. They have to report what they do. And this includes the use of force and the threat of the use of force. So if you are threatening somebody as a police officer and you're saying, you're getting a bit too out of hand, we need to de-escalate the situation. We need to talk about this. If they're still being wild, and you warn them like, look, we need to have a conversation. If you don't, I'm gonna have to tase you. Even if they do calm down and they do start talking out their frustrations, what's happening, what's upset, you still have to issue a comprehensive report that you threatened somebody with your taser. And that goes all the way up and down that scale because it provides accountability for that individual police officer, a police officer's entire precinct or chapter or whatever it ends up being, depending on where you're at. And it provides accountability for everybody as a society so that we can keep an eye on each other. Those are the 8 that can't wait. Those are the 8 things that need to happen in every police force across this country. And if you go to 8cantwait.org, you can look these up yourself. See what they are, and they will let you look up your city to see if your local police force adheres to these 8 rules. And if they don't, they will also help provide you the tools so that you can contact your local governments to ask that they be implemented. Those are the 8 things that we need. Does that solve the problem? No. Is that a good first step? Yes. Because the belated arrests of George Floyd's murderers, or the belated reopening of the investigation of Breonna Taylor's murderers, that's not a good first step. That is a very sad band-aid to wanting people to calm down because they're upset that they are being murdered and that the people that are supposed to protect them are the ones that are murdering them, and not enough is being done to actually put a check and balance on that system. Black lives matter. This is not a fun conversation for anyone to have. Anybody. Nobody enjoys this conversation. It's not comfortable. It's not something that we enjoy. It's not something that we all just nestle around the couch with some tea or hot cocoa to have. This is that a humongous part of our society is built on the idea of benefiting those at the top and keeping both the poor, which you may experience, because that is where people will want to throw that privilege out of the window of like, I don't have privilege, I've struggled my whole life, I can't make any money. We understand, because I know that feel. I grew up really poor, but you know what? I grew up not worrying about the safety of my own life. That's the difference. Black lives matter. All lives can't matter until Black lives matter, until they matter equally. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for listening. If you're looking for ways to help, 1, 8 Can't Wait's a start. I understand if you knee-jerk away from the idea of abolish and defund the police, because it does immediately feel drastic. But everything that police solve can be solved by more people than just them. But if you do want to keep your local police around, start with 8 Can't Wait. Start with keeping them accountable for their actions and enforcing on your own a commitment to fighting against that behavior. Because if there's one good cop and 5 bad cops to silence the good one, that one good cop can't do anything. This isn't even talking about the way that our system's built. This isn't even talking about the way that we have a cyclical prison system, the way that capitalism wants to make sure that you can't get anywhere. This is purely talking about police brutality in this country. Yes, they shoot and kill white people. They kill more white people in terms of strict numbers, but if you actually look at the underlying data points, you will see that Black people are 7 times more likely to be killed by a police officer than a white person. despite them only making up 13% of the United States population. You can cherry pick numbers all you want to try and fit your narrative. It doesn't change the reality that they are treated worse, that they are killed more often, that there are more of them in prison because of a system designed to put them there. Black Lives Matter. I'm going to leave some more resources, the very first links in the description below, for you to see what you can do to help. And if something I said upsets you, one, I welcome you to comment. I want to have this discussion because it's important that we do, because for a long time, no one has been. The only people that have been having this discussion are the people that are being oppressed by it. They're having it amongst themselves, not with the people that can help them. But if it upsets you, one, share your thoughts below. And two, ask yourself why it upsets you. Racism is not something that is easy for a racist person to recognize. And it's not even to say that you are blatantly racist. But racism is taught. Racism is learned. And in some ways it can be very subtle. It can be very subconscious and you don't even realize it. And you have to do your best to check that both in yourself, your friends, your coworkers, and others. And make sure that those microaggressions don't happen so that we can reach a better society where all lives matter. Because right now they don't. And that's the problem. So please check out the links. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. My name is Michael Schwahn.